everybody, welcome back to Escape from Bald Mountain. In this video I'm going to be going over more of the queue. Last time I worked on the queue, and this time I'm hoping to kind of not exactly finish it entirely, but I get pretty darn close. This whole session probably took me about 3 hours total. Some portions I kind of took out because they were just a little too jumpy, and some decisions I thought I was going to use ended up not getting used, so I took those portions out. At any rate, you'll see today that I'm actually very close to the entire queue being finished. I don't exactly get there, but I come very close. So this building I'm working on here, in the last video, I thought I had a good idea on what I wanted to do with it, and it turns out I didn't. So I returned to it, and I make some very much needed modifications to it. And I guess last time I left off talking about themed queues a little, so I'll spend a few minutes talking about those. And that is, like I said last time, themed queues are something that are pretty unique to Disney. Other people had done like very minimal themed queuing even back in the amusement park days of Coney Island, Sea Lion Park, things like that, but Disney really perfected them. They're the ones that kind of took the idea of, if you're gonna have people waiting in line, you got to give them something to see. And it really started, like I said, with the Haunted Mansion. They had some other sort of interesting aesthetic things they did with certain queues before the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, but the Haunted Mansion probably was the first concentrated effort on a themed queue to actually give them something that not only would give an idea of what was going to come in the ride, but actually made it part of the ride. So like when you go in a Disney ride and you stand in one of their queues, it's actually considered part of the experience. So nowadays in like theme park design, you hear a lot about pre-show and maybe even a pre-show, pre-ride entire show, like Twilight's Zone Tower of Terror. You'll see that they have an entire video and narration, pretty much telling you the story of what's going to happen. And this is pretty common, but before the advent of the video type stuff, you had things like the Haunted Mansion that would essentially set you up for what was going to happen inside the mansion itself. And so with Bald Mountain, it was a little bit difficult because the Night on Bald Mountain sequence doesn't really give you much to work with in terms of, what do we actually see before we actually see Chernobog and Bald Mountain and all the demons and things like that? Well, the only thing we really do see is a small little village and a graveyard. And like I said before, what we see in Night on Bald Mountain is definitely not this Gothic and Tudor style architecture. We see much more of a Dutch colonial style architecture, and I decided to go against that because, again, it's a little unorthodox, but I figured that most people, in order to make something imposing and creepy and a little bit dark, I decided to go with this Gothic style, which, again, I may change it up in the future. It's just, I'll be honest with you, my talent level is not up to par yet for getting that Dutch colonial style look in the game at the moment. And another reason is simply because I think the Gothic architecture is something I'm going to be working a lot with the overall setting and feel of the Shadowlands, which of course is where this ride's going to be located at within the park. And what I'm doing here is I'm essentially building at least some minimal theming within these buildings itself, so we don't have empty queues, or we have queues that are going through and you can see all the scenery that makes up the building. It just looks very bad. So minimal attempt here, nothing too crazy, just some walls, a couple of skull torches, and that's essentially it. And I pretty much take this, you'll see me in a little bit, and cut and paste it and take it on into the next building. But I considered not having any interior theming at all, and I figured that probably wasn't the best way. And to be honest with you, I will return to these interiors in a later video. It's just right now, for the time being, I want to get at least the exterior portion of the queues looking pretty decent, and then I want to go to work on the actual coaster itself and the mountain itself, because that's going to take a pretty good chunk of time, and it's also going to be, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be pretty boring because most of it's going to be terrain work. I'm going to try and attempt to make this what looks now like a very smooth mountain and turn it into this craggy, rocky, violent looking thing, and that's going to take a little bit of time. This idea, actually, I thought ended up working out really well. I was a little bit disappointed with the disjointed look of my single cathedral, so I decided, well, why don't we double down and turn it into this big towering structure. So that's what I did, is I took a portion of the old building and turned it into a super mega church cathedral building. That's essentially what I did. Took one part, copied it, put it over, and now you see, rather than having a single wing Gothic cathedral, you've got this pretty much a triple wing Gothic cathedral. So I thought that worked out really well, and I thought about adding another wing to it, but I didn't want to go overkill on it. I thought this was enough, and now I'm just doing a little bit of lighting. Some of the stuff I put in 16 times speed because I figured it was pretty, well, it's just lighting. I don't think you need to see it too much, so I did want to put it in to show you kind of where I'm putting my lights, but I figured overall you didn't really need to see it. And then, of course, over here I'm working on these big large arches to plaster all over this cathedral and make it actually look relatively uniformed, which I don't know if I succeeded entirely, but it was a noble effort. And these arches gave me a little bit of trouble because it has to do with the windows, so I had to pull the arches out before I after I put the windows down. And I actually liked it. It ended up giving the building a little more depth, I think. So it's not I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. In here, more just smoothing and working on those transitions from the exterior into the interior portions, and this I'm really glad I actually did. It's a total transition from the exterior entrance queue. I wanted to do one big arch, and I like it a lot better than the singular arch, as it looked very asymmetrical. And like I said in the last video, I don't like that. Disney doesn't like that either. If this is a Disney park, you gotta have some semblance of symmetry, and getting to work in those queues is going to be a little bit, inside of those queues is going to be a little bit tougher. So this little idea I had here, I had a liking. It's pretty much a bigger little mausoleum, or excuse me, gravestone, and I will definitely build a couple more of those, but I like that. I like the way it looks. Back here to the interior, I just cut and paste this, throw it down, and I go to start working on my main interior area. And coming up, you're going to see some really bad camera angles because it was really difficult to get in here and start working on this. If I could, and definitely for the future, but if I could do it over, I would have done these interior areas of the themed queue first before raising the ground up or putting paths all over them or anything like that. So that was a failure on my part, because getting in here in these tight spaces with the camera is just tough. And as you can see here, on this exit part of the queue, I wanted to do a little covered pathway, and that way it also gives it a little visual energy from the coaster itself. I return back here to my stone bench area, and for some reason I can't find a way to get this to cut and paste, and it's really starting to upset me a lot, because I want to make those benches and I just can't do it. For whatever reason, I cannot do it. And here, more just scenery placing. I put this in 16 times speed because it's pretty boring to just put the grass and the boulders. I think they are necessary for making a place look pretty unified and pretty good, but generally speaking, I don't like showing it too much because it's really boring. And then now I get to go work on the actual ride show building itself, starting with the bottom portion here. I'll probably return to this area in the future because I don't succeed in really what I'm trying to get done here, but it doesn't look entirely terrible, I don't think, but it definitely needs some work to liven it up. So then I get to work on the ride building itself, and the idea, at least in the initial proposal you'll see here, was to have this sort of hell pit type looking thing. So they would walk over these, in an ideal world it'd be like a lava river down below them. I don't have those tools in the game, so I just went with this little hell pit thing, and now I get to work on the actual show building itself. You can see here I kind of learned from my previous problems, which was, if you're gonna have stuff on the interior of the queue, build that before you put a roof on it. So I'm not entirely satisfied with the end result, but it's better than what I was initially going to do, was just going to leave it open. I did not want to leave it open. So I ended up going with more of this cathedral type looking thing here, and again with the turrets, and at least from a distance it doesn't look too terrible. So then I start putting the roofs on, start going to work on if I'm going to have this sort of unthemed rooftop. I said, well, why not just cover it up with the mountain, make it be blend in with the mountain, and that's what I ended up doing, and I actually ended up liking it pretty well. When you're working with tight spaces, especially with the camera that we have in the game, you need to be very careful with how you move your camera. As you can see, my camera just went all haywire all the time, and here I'm just doing another really big arch using those little arced roof, I think the roof attachments, ceiling attachments, to get this shape going, and I liked it. And then I just cover it with these glass panels, window panels, to give it that gothic look, at least as much as we can right now. Lighten it up a bit, and I'm almost satisfied with my actual ride queue itself, ride building itself. Still got to do some work on it, but overall not terrible. Anyways, I wanted to get this video up because I'm trying to do a video a week, and I'm not done with the queue itself, but I'm very close to it. And I think in the next video I'm going to finish the queue and then go to work on the actual coaster and the mountain, which is something to look forward to. I want to get it done before we enter into Alpha 3, which is coming, I believe, in August 28th, because I've got a really busy fall. So I'm hoping to get this out before Alpha 3 so I can implement some of the new ideas for Alpha 3, and then also go to work on some other projects, because I've got some other things I want to work on in this game prior to Alpha 3 being released, or excuse me, after Alpha 3 is released. So we're coming up on the end. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next week. Bye.